Unknown is Craig. Everyone watching, amazing. So, today's module is going to be around master level Twitter strategies. And the way I've divided it is into three pillars. Number one, we're going to talk branding. Number two, we're going to talk content types. And three, we're going to talk strategies. I've used the plural strategies here. It's really one strategy that I've honed in as much as possible over the past weeks that has really helped, that I can't wait to get into. So let's start with part one, branding. For me, one of the biggest questions I've had to contemplate when starting my content creator career was, what is branding? What is personal branding? What does it mean? What does it impact? What lasting impression does it have? And personally, I think one of the most subtle elements of branding is the metrics you see in front of you right now. So one of the most interesting bits, these are, by the way, to give you a bit of context, from the many conversations I've had with other content creators, a lot of the time we get to share with each other our own metrics. So how have we performed over the past week? What have we noticed? What are some insights that we've unlocked? So those are five different screenshots of the previous week of five, I would say, recognizable influencers in the space right now. So the thing that I found personally very interesting is, or are these two metrics specifically, the profile visits and the number of new followers you got. And what I found very fascinating was when comparing those metrics with each other, all of a sudden we realized that, you could have 1 million impressions, you could have 4,000 people visit your profile, but you could have 16% conversion rate. Meanwhile, you could also have 1 million impressions, you could have less people visit your profile, but you could have more conversion, which ends up with being more, even though technically you had less profile visits. So all of this was very interesting to me. How can you optimize the journey from having someone tap onto your profile to see what's up, to see who you are, to someone converting into a new follower potentially? And this is where I wanted to use the case study of two of my very good friends, Punk, who recently rebranded to Pix. So this is an outdated fake news screenshot. I took it yesterday. He rebranded an hour after I took the screenshot. I couldn't be bothered, as you can see. So Pix and Zaimiri. And some of the striking similarities I've seen, I could include a lot more people. Legendary is one as well. Bubbits recently, I know he's with us as well. He's changed his banner recently. So some of the most striking resemblances I've started noticing from all of these great creators is, one, they have very clean banners. Their banners even match the color scheme of and complement their PFPs. That's one. Two, their names, very simple names. Most of the time, one quick emoji next to the name. So not 2 words, not 3 words, just one. Punk, right now Pix, Zaimiri with the pen. Lastly, they have, next, they have very clean bios, and there's a piece of alpha I'll give you about bios in a second. And lastly, they all have free resources, and they literally frame them as free resources. You like my content? Here's more free content for you. So what do all of these guys have in common? I would list it out as simplicity, a color familiarity. That's a tricky word. Not just with the headers, not just with the PFPs, but also throughout their content. A lot of these guys tend to use the same color schemes and patterns. And lastly, the biggest bit of alpha is that their profiles isn't about them most of the time. It's actually more about you. And when I say you, I'm referencing the reader, the person landing on their profile. And this was actually one of the best alpha that Zaimiri has given me. I was once asking Zaimiri, because he put out this very good bio template. I told him to to roast my bio. I told him, please go ahead, read my bio. I want you to do your best job at roasting it. He went through my bio and he told me point blank, Kermit, no one gives a shit. Uh, it struck me, I was expecting a roast, but what do you mean no one gave a shit? And the biggest problem I had made was that I failed to recognize that I'm not writing the bio for me. I'm writing the bio for the person reading it. And what does the person reading it for the first time? You see Kermit, you see this frog, you see, maybe you've seen a post, maybe you've seen someone reference me, maybe you're seeing me on a space, like Bubbits was saying. You click on me. What is the first thing you want to know? You don't necessarily care about who I am as a person. You want to know how I can help you. And this was the biggest mentality shift I'd say I've gotten from Zaimiri, was reframing my bio from who I am, what I've accomplished, boasting about my success, to how I can help you. So this bio template, highly recommend you follow it by Zaimiri. It's one of Zaimiri's posts, as you can see. So first, he starts with his branding. He's known as the Writing Bean. Very strong branding, by the way, especially given his PFP. Then what I offer, so how you can help the person reading. I can help you grow your Twitter account, now X. Why should people follow you? This is very important. And then lastly, you keep this to the last bit. Why should people take you seriously? So your credentials, Zaimiri, he's a successful Web 2 and Web 3 entrepreneur. And then lastly, here's some free value. If you don't have a newsletter, if you don't have, the next part of your funnel set up, it's okay. You don't need that bit. It's just the cherry on top, I'd say. So again, it's less about him and it's more about you. And this is where I would invite you guys to be open to constantly optimizing your uh, your profile, whether it's your banner, your PFP, your name, your bio, your link, or how you word your link, or what link you provide to people. I would highly encourage you to constantly try things out and experiment. Recently, I've changed my banner to this. The main reason is I wanted that, as you can see with Zaimiri and Punk. One thing they had going was they had, by the way, I think this is the best banner I've ever seen. A testimonial by the one and only Frank. Not gonna lie, Pix is a great writer. So I just wanted this, so I figured might as well do a revamp, a rebrand. And really what you want to focus on, and what I want to encourage you to focus on, isn't your number of followers daily or weekly. I want you to focus more on how you optimize your percentage of followers. So, you could have 600 new followers this week. Great, but maybe you've had 20,000 people see your profile. That's horrible conversion. Meanwhile, you could have 700 people see your profile and 700 people follow. This means that you have one of the best setup profiles in the world. And in the long haul, the person who's going to win the race, the figurative race, obviously, not there's no real race on X, is going to be the person with the highest optimization for followers, not the one who's gaining the most today, the one who's going to gain constantly in the long haul. Beautiful. So this is part 1. We move on to part 2, which is content types, and I'll invite you all to give any questions you have for the 3 parts at the end. So part 2, content types. In my brain, when I'm scrolling Twitter, there are really only 2 types of posts. Only. These are only the 2 types that can ever exist on Twitter or X, which are the GM tweets and the branded tweets. And you can tell right away how well GM tweets do in comparison to any other type of tweet, which is why I've classified them into these 2 exclusive umbrellas in my head. So let's dig into GM tweets first. From experience, from what I've seen, and from the data I've collected around different creators, I can tell that there are three types of GM creatives that are performing very well on X. And here are the three types. Number one, customized PFP. Whale does it very well with his Azuki. So it's posting exactly his PFP, but maybe he'd customize the thing he's holding, the jacket he's wearing, the background, um, or something like that. This helps familiarize people with your specific PFP. Then there's the interactive PFP, which is your character interacting with the world around it. So it's not necessarily exactly the same pose as your PFP. It's, for example, Whale also does it well with all of his fan art submissions. And lastly, something very underrated, which I've been seeing more and more creators deploy now, are GIFs versus videos. There was a time, especially a month ago, where GIFs were getting heavily boosted. So I would tell you, just go hard on GIFs. Right now, it's about the same. GIFs and videos are both getting boosted with a slight preference into videos. So this is where I want to push you to really try to think, how can I produce short, cute 5 to 6 second video clips of, maybe it's your NFTs, maybe it's your Chimpers that's animated, turning it to a 6 second video of it, just lively bouncing around. So just experiment with that. Highly encourage you to do it, since the algo seems to be boosting video content at the moment. So again, customized PFP, it helps people familiarize with your NFT. Interactive PFP, it helps develop your character's IP. And lastly, the GIFs and videos, they're global. Anyone can engage on them. I don't need to know who you are. It's just a silly character that I'm seeing. It's a cute character that I'm seeing do something entertaining. So I don't need the context of the creator to interact with it, which renders it a very OP type of GM. And second, we have the giant umbrella term, the branded tweet, which, in my opinion, branded tweets, if it's not a GM, your tweet is meant to position you as the expert in your industry. So it's any type of tweet that isn't a GM should position you as the expert of fill in the blank. What are you the expert of? This is where I go back to last week's workshop, last week's module. What are your passions? What are your values? What are your goals in the space? And this is exactly what you want to be known as the expert of. So for me, for example, I'm an NFT growth consultant. So any tweet that isn't a GM, I'm typically trying to show people that I know something about growth, NFT growth. So for example, here I'm showcasing my knowledge of the power of association, whether it's with Nike, Adidas, Chimpers, Kaiju, so on and so forth. And in that umbrella category, I would say there are 6 types of content, which are: number one, for example, here,
We
Zaimid.
lost you for 5 seconds.
My internet cut. Where did you lose me?
Just 5 seconds ago, at the beginning of the sentence.
No problem. So I was saying there are 6 content types, and those are: number one, listicles. You can see Zaimidi here giving out a list. How do you provide value? You give out payment, you offer one-on-one access, you give this, you give that. So developing a list, those are always very engaging and educational. There are how-to guides. So for example, here, the biggest onboarding event is about to happen. Here's how you can position yourself. So a how-to guide, a motivational post, something that will motivate your reader to do something or try something new out. Or sometimes it's celebratory, like me celebrating this milestone. And then a very powerful one, very powerful one, is the personal story, which is you sharing something you've personally overcome, a personal success, anything that's personal would classify under a personal story. Those always tend to do well, and they also always develop your character and how people perceive you. Deep dives, those I would say 99% of threads can qualify or tend to qualify under deep dives. And lastly, data and insight. The best or the biggest light bulb moment I had in the space a couple of months ago, I was talking with an ex Twitter exec. He was going through my content, and I asked him, what do you think of my content? He told me, Kermit, you're great with data. You do a very good job at showcasing data. You really pick out interesting data sets, but you don't answer the question, so what? So what, the data looks like this. So what Bitcoin is doing this. So what Ethereum is doing that. So what he told me is people do not resonate with data. They resonate with our very good friend here, Jacob. They resonate with insight. So it's not about what the data shows. It's about what you can take away from the data. So if you're a data nerd, if you're a data geek, don't just give your audience the data. You can either give it to them straight or you can leave them on a trail so that they can do their own reasoning. You don't have to do the reasoning for them, but give them enough crumbs so they can understand sort of what they're looking at. Beautiful. That was part 2. And lastly, part 3, the strategies. Again, plural. It's really just one strategy I want to focus on today, which if we go to NFT Inspect today and we look at the top performers, there's one thing that stands out, apart from large followings. There's one thing that stands out to me that was very interesting 6 months ago, which was how many tweets these people are putting out. Shah is putting out 300 tweets every day. Whale, I know he's famously said he's put out 400 tweets every single day for the past year without skipping a beat. Borovic 100, so on and so forth. But a big question for me, and that was before I had discovered, what they were doing. You probably all know the answer. These guys are replying 100 times, 200 times, 300, 400 times every single day to other people. And this is, I've taken the best example, one of the best reply guys or people who deploy the reply guy strategy, which is Whale, who does it 400 times consistently. And there's a very interesting law. It's called the Law of Seven. It was developed by movie studios in the 1930s. And that law states that it takes the average person 7 times of them seeing your message before they can make a decision to buy your product. And in terms of buying your product, of course, here we mean it takes them 7 times before they follow you. They end up deciding to even look around. So what do you think happens when Whale pops up on your feed 10 times? What do you think happens when he pops up on your feed 100, 1,000, 10,000 times? Which, if we do the math, he's doing 400 replies times 7. This guy is popping up on almost 3,000 people every single week from replies alone. Leave impressions out. Replies alone, he's interacting 3,000 times with people. And this starts to make sense, or the numbers I have highlighted now start to make sense in that context. So really, the reply guy strategy, if you really want to be disciplined with it, and I'll give you a hint of alpha I've recently started deploying, the strategy would be to consistently engage with 100 to 200 people per day without missing a beat, without skipping a beat. No exceptions. A recommended framework I could give you, and here, Simi, it's where you were commenting earlier that you got shadow banned. You're unsure why. It could have been you've replied to a wrong account. I'm gonna tell you, shadow bans are one of the most frustrating things in the space. I've experienced them time and time and time again firsthand. Leon can attest to how many times I've come up on a call and I was completely frustrated, just lashing out at Twitter. Oh, Elon, since he took over, the app is the worst now. The app is this, the app is that. Now Leon is happy. He's has his camera closed, sipping on his cold coffee. One thing I would recommend you to do is never do. I love it. Never do more than 50 tweets an hour. One thing, and I would love to go back and look for it and send it over to you guys. I remember Xero, Xero. He used to post a lot of alpha around the algorithm, and one thing he had highlighted was your threshold of getting shadow banned depends on how many followers. So if you're at more than 10k followers, you can do 400 replies a day, no problem. You don't get shadow banned. If you're at 5,000 people, you can do 200 replies a day, no problem. If you're under 5,000, you get close to 100 replies, you'll get shadow banned instantly. So, however, how many replies you can do will depend, unfortunately, on the number of followers you currently have, which is why, if we go back to the previous slide, I recommend anywhere between 100 and 200. This is dependent on the number of followers you have. Obviously, the more you can do, I say go for it. Do as many as you can do. Keep in mind, Whale does 400 every single day. So a question then becomes, who do I interact with? Bubbits raised a very good question, which is, I'm going on my feed and it's the randomest things that I'm seeing. I'm seeing Web2 accounts, Web3 accounts, people I don't follow, people I followed 6 years ago. Who do I interact with? Who do I target with my replies? And this is where I want to invite you to make 3 lists on Twitter. This is going to be the bulk of your homework for the week. The first list, I want you to think of it as the big fish. You're hunting for the big fish. You're going fishing and you're going for the biggest fish of them all. How fitting that the biggest fish is called whale. So you're hunting for whales, basically. And what I want you to think of in this list, I've given you NFT Inspect as a reference, but you can go for, Leon is saying this is important alpha. I'll tell you exactly why in a second as well. With these replies, you're optimizing for 2 things, or with these interactions, you're optimizing for 2 things. Number 1, you're optimizing for getting that big account to notice you so that potentially one day they start interacting with your content. I don't know if you know, but if Whale, historically, the posts where Whale interacted or commented on that tweet versus the ones he didn't, the ones he replied on my tweets in, the posts have always done better. The engagement has always been bigger, the reach, so on and so forth. So the more big accounts you can get on your side, the better for you. And second is this also affects your global reach. So over here, this number, I know we have some people, I remember when going through the applications for the Chimpers Academy, I know some people I've seen have mastered the viral reply strategy, which is you replying to a big account and your comment going viral. And this, I don't know if you know, actually boosts your global reach, right? More impressions for you. Global reach is based on your number of impressions in the past 7 days and compares it to the rest of the market. So the more impressions you have, the bigger that percentage, the higher up you're going to be on that list. So these are the 2 things you're optimizing for with the big fish list. Let's call it the big fish list. The second list you want is a connections list. This is a list of people you genuinely want to connect with. And with this list, I personally have started with 100. Every day I'm growing that list. This isn't a list where I've capped at 100 and then I've called it a day. I've relaxed. I've called Leon. I've started drinking cold tea or cold coffee with him. I don't know why I keep picking on your cold coffee, man. Apologies. But This
You
is
left
a
out the
list.
part where you added whiskey in that coffee.
Nothing to make the workday more enjoyable. So this is a list. You want to consider all of your friends. These are everyone you want to connect with ever in Web3. Add, be as liberal with that list. Just anyone you see that you like, just add to that list. And lastly, the inspiration list, which, I'd recommend going for 20-ish accounts. The more the better, obviously, but with that list, I want you to be a bit more selective and choose people that really fit your niche. For example, if you've picked, I want to be an NFT analyst, really just target and add people to that list that fit the NFT analyst role. For example, Zaimiri, he's an amazing creator. His niche is growth hacking on Twitter. So if I'm an NFT expert, an NFT deep dive analyst, I wouldn't add Zaimiri to that list. I've added Zaimiri to every list because we're very good friends. I want to always interact with him. But this is the thinking I want you to have with this list in specific. Only add the people that really fit your niche, because this list isn't about interacting with those people, although it's always good to interact with those people. It's more for you to come up with inspiration whenever you create content. And I'll show you exactly how I use it in a second. This is where I want to pull in our very good friend, Alex, NFT God. He recently, August 25th, so literally 4 days ago, he put out a tweet introducing people to X Pro. This is a tool I haven't used in a while, to be frank. But as soon as I saw this tweet, I was like, X Pro? What is X Pro? And then I figured out, oh, this is TweetDeck. They've taken TweetDeck, they've rebranded it. And I had completely forgotten about TweetDeck, but the alpha he's given in that tweet is phenomenal, because all of a sudden, what used to take me 4 hours a day of replying, finding tweets, looking for tweets, now takes me a quarter of the time. So what is the alpha he's given? Basically, how you want to access X Pro and how you can set up or have your setup ready is going on your Twitter, clicking more over here on your profile, then clicking that X Pro button. It will open X Pro. What you want to do is create a new deck. You can see I've called mine Reply Guy with the microphone, because this is the mentality I'm in when I'm in this deck. I'm a reply guy. And then you want to add 3 columns specifically. And what you want to do once you click add column is click on lists, and then you add those 3 lists. So 3 columns, 3 lists. 1 is the Big Fish account, 2 is the connections account, 3 is the inspiration account, inspiration list. Once you add them, a big hack that I've found, because one thing you'll notice right away from these lists, if you add them on X Pro, it will show you the replies of the replies of the replies of the replies. Like, it won't show you the original posts a lot of the time. It'll just show you the replies of a bunch of people on that list, which is a nightmare. So what you want to do, click on the search icon, scroll down to likes, replies, and reposts, and then toggle off show replies. You don't want to see replies. All of a sudden, once you toggle it off, you'll only see the original tweets themselves. And this is my setup at the moment. I click on reply guy and I have interact with list. This is my connections list. I have brain dump, which is my inspiration list. I called it brain dump because it's where I spend time just dumping ideas and going through the feed, seeing if there's anything I might be inspired by. And then big is Big Fish. I just called it big. You can see there are also other accounts outside of Web3 that I might interact with to get that reach. This seems very inappropriate video. But anyway, so again, going back into those 3 lists, interact with the recent piece of alpha. And I don't know if I'm the only one who realized this very recently. Last week, I I have Whale's post notification on, so whenever he replies or posts, I get a notification on my phone. Last week, I started seeing his replies. I'm like, oh, Whale just posted. Let me go see what he posted. And then I was like, hold on a second. Has Whale Pavlov dogged me? Like, am I now Pavlov's dog? He's conditioned me to know when he's on a reply hunt, he's just posted. Then I was like, hold on, let me reverse engineer this. So this guy, every time he posts, he goes on a reply spree. He will reply to 100 accounts every single time he posts. So I was like, hold on, okay, let me try it. Maybe this guy, obviously, he's very smart. Maybe he's onto something I've never thought about. So what I ended up doing today, for example, was I posted a thread. Right after I posted it, I went to the interact with list and I interacted with, I believe it was 40 people, not 100 people. It shows you I need to still add more people because there's not always enough posts, even, with, I think my list has 200 people now. And you can see if you go to the interactions on that thread, my action of going on a reply hunt ended up with I would say 80% conversion rate, where 80% of the people I had replied to on my reply spree ended up going to my account, going to my profile, going on that thread and interacting with it, whether it was through a reply, a retweet, or even a comment. So massive, massive alpha. I don't know if I'm the only one who discovered this recently or not. Next up is inspiration. And the way I use it, for example, yesterday, Legendary made this tweet about Friend Tech, where he was saying, don't forget to sell early. So it inspired me to go and check the data on Friend Tech. And you can see a couple of minutes later, I ended up making a tweet about Friend Tech. Friend Tech volume plummeted by 90%, daily user by 80% this week. So this is how I would invite you to use that inspiration board. Obviously, don't rip off the tweet. Try to come up with your own conclusion. Ask yourself, what about this inspires me? Or what about this did I find interesting? And how can I replicate it? And lastly, before we wrap up for today, is the viral replies. Here is for all my UK people. You're gonna appreciate this meme that I've shared. Totally not offensive whatsoever. I found a tweet. It was I remember comparing American to English to Australian, and I just Googled British meme. I took the first picture, how to speak British, and I just posted it. As we speak, it's at 200,000 views. So it was success, I would say. The reason I did this, and the sole reason I did this, was just engagement, because you can see as soon as I posted it, this was around the time I posted it, reach started going up. So this shows you a direct correlation between viral replies and your global reach on NFT Inspect. So this is something me and Legendary joke about a lot. A lot of the time, we're busy with work. We can barely balance making a tweet, let alone a thread. So we go the lazy route sometimes. We make viral replies instead to stay on the top of the leaderboard on NFT Inspect. That is something I can say shamelessly now that I have a reply above 250,000 impressions. And that's it. I want to leave you, obviously, a great teacher always leaves his students with great homework. I would invite you to go over this presentation again and apply the main learnings, which are: number one, optimizing your branding; two, creating different types of content for the week using the content types; 3, creating your lists, the 3 lists that we've shared today. And lastly, replying to 100 people, and especially trying the reply strategy after you've posted. So posting something and then going on a reply spree and testing your conversion rate. And